Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the InduSoft Remote Water Supply Solutions. We have a very special guest today from CMW Automation, Mark, and he will be co-hosting this webinar with me. Who am I? My name is Scott Courtier. I'm Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft, and before I hand the presentation over to Mark, I'm going to cover some quick InduSoft features that really complement water type applications, whether you're doing remote type of water applications, whether you're doing wastewater, pumping applications, monitoring, whatever the case may be. I'm going to cover a handful of features in InduSoft Web Studio that will complement those type of water type applications. Then I'll hand it over to Mark, and he's going to talk about a particular application that he has done. And so let's get right into this. Oh, but before I start, just some quick logistics. On this type of webinar, we can't hear you. So if you have any questions or comments, please put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel. We are recording this webinar. We'll have that up on the site in a couple of days. And if you didn't know, we have over 130 webinars recorded up on the website, maybe even more than that by now. So if you take a look at those, if you have a question on a particular topic, take a look on the website. I'll show you where those are located. And if you still have any questions or ideas to have another webinar when we send you a survey, let us know how we did today, and let us know how if there's any more information you'd like on a particular topic. Also, let us know if you'd be interested in co-hosting a webinar. We're always looking for co-hosts, new and unique and great ideas to be presented. Customers are always interested in that. Get some free press for your company if you're interested. And let's see. So we'll send that survey out. If you give us your T-shirt size, we're going to send you a free T-shirt just for joining us. So I think that's it on the logistics. I may have more as time progresses, but these are the things that I'm going to cover before I hand things over to Mark. Symbols. We're going to talk a little bit about not only the symbol library, but how to create your own symbols and some great resources to be able to do that. And not only symbols, but using a similar idea of what we call custom properties, be able to create what's called screen parameters, or a while ago we called them mnemonics. Now we call them custom properties, so you can take a look for those in the help system. I'm going to talk about some driver features that are very neat and flexible and might help you in the water industry as well as other industries, and then I'm going to point you some additional resources where you can find some of this stuff on the website. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about symbols and the symbol library. So let's bring in the development environment here, and I've got let's see, I've got PC demo loaded up. So let's look in the symbol library. That can be found here under the graphics tab. If you go open up the symbol library, you're going to see that we've got a lot of symbols. There's well over 1,000 symbols now. And things like motors and pumps. We've added some symbols since version 8. So here you can see some 3D pumps. There's a pump faceplate symbol, some motors, obviously tanks. And we've updated the libraries a little bit in version 8, and we're always adding to this. If you didn't know, we have a Symbol of the Week program, and we take requests for those. And if you go to our website, and you go over here to the store and you go to free add-ons, you can see that we've got this Symbol of the Week program here, and we've got lots of different symbols. Here's an I/O faceplate from the PLC, some gauges, some status. There's all kinds of really good information, some stoplight indicators, clocks, you name it. Every type of industry is represented in here, but there's always room for more. So if you have some ideas, please send them in, and we'd love to see some details. Also, you can ask about those on our forums as well. There's a forum section specifically for the symbols as well. So let me move this window out of the screen here. And so in addition to the tanks and the motors and the pumps and things of that nature for water, I want to talk a bit about how you might create your own symbol. If I take a look at, let me stick a screen here in this PC demo, just a brand new blank screen. And I'm going to take from the symbol library and just take one of the sliders and here, because this illustrates some of the good points here. So if you notice, there was an error message that came up, actually a warning message that says, hey, you already have a symbol of the same name in your project. Do you want to overwrite it? And the reason is when you take from this symbol library here, that's taking from your global library when you install the product and putting a copy of it into your project. So it goes into a folder in your project called project symbols. And the reason it does that is if you make any changes to the symbols that are in your project, they can take effect throughout your entire project. But what you don't want to happen is you don't want those changes maybe to overwrite the global library. Let's say maybe I changed the color of this symbol or changed its size or maybe changed it from a percentage to, I don't know, PSI or some units there. You don't necessarily want it to overwrite your global symbols, which you can write those back simply by right-clicking and say send to system symbols. So that can be done. Another thing that I want to show, okay, so first of all, if I go back into the symbol library here and I show you some of the nicer like buttons and lamps and things, these symbols can be edited, they can be changed, modified, or you can create your own from scratch. But in addition to just being graphical, there's really three different things that symbols hold for you. The first one is the graphical nature, so you can keep things looking consistent. The second thing is this linked design. As I mentioned, this slider, I took a copy out of the symbol library and put it into my project. So now it lives here under the sliders in my project. And if I make a change to this, then it will be linked to all of those others throughout my entire project. So that's why we call it the linked symbol, because all the symbols that refer back to that one common design are linked to it. The third piece is what we call custom properties. And if I double click on this, what you're going to see is these two columns here, property and value. I want you to think about that for a second, and I'll show you how these get defined. I also want to show you that we have a tag name and the value is blank, a min 0, a max 100, and I'll show you where those come from. Instead of double clicking on this to get the properties, if I right click on it and go into edit linked symbol, well then here I can actually edit this symbol. I'm in a symbol editor. It looks similar to the screen editor, but it's actually a slightly different editor. And I just happen to know that this one is grouped. They don't have to be grouped, but I'm going to ungroup it, and I'm going to take a look at this little slider handle that happens to be a bitmap in here, and we put a position animation on it. If you notice these three properties here, they don't look like typical tag names or values, and I'm going to show you where those come from. I'm going to open up the help system and put this full screen here, and we'll type in symbols, and we're going to scroll down to the symbol library. And so here gives you some good information, but here's how you can create your own symbols. Now I'm going to scroll down about halfway down in here and show you the syntax. Now this syntax is, it starts with a hash mark or a pound sign. I'm going to skip over this category because it's optional, and then I'm going to show you property, colon, and then value. Remember property and value? I'm going to go back to the development environment. If I look at this, that's where that property and value come from. So I'm setting up these custom properties, and I can define the property name and the default value. So again, the syntax is a pound sign, the property name, a colon, and the default value. And notice that the default value is optional. So if I go back into that object, into that slider, you can see here that we have pound sign min colon 0, pound sign or hash max colon 100, and then hash tag name colon and then blank. Well, those three things set up these two columns. Again, the tag name was blank, and you can now put in a tag name there, min 0, max 100. So that's where those are coming from. And I like to think of this, so first of all, this is what we call custom properties for symbols. But I like to think of this as much more really than the graphical aspect of what most people think of as symbols. I'm really thinking of this now as more you can create your own custom objects within InduSoft Web Studio. So there's a real horsepower there that comes in, and hopefully I'm not stepping on Mark's toes, because he's going to show you how he implemented symbols in his project. Now I want to take this a little bit further and show you a concept that we have. Let me close this screen without saving so I don't ruin my demo here. If I run my PC demo, and if you didn't know, this PC demo gets installed with InduSoft Web Studio, so everybody has a copy of this, and feel free to take a look at it and learn from it and understand. I'm going to go here to different industries and then move down to food and beverage. And this is a really good example. If you see these 3 tanks, and this is how it can relate to a water application. I've clicked on tank number 1, and it's opened up a pop-up screen or a pop-up window here. But you notice that it has information about tank 1. If I close this and click on tank 2, that's exactly the same screen, but now it's passed it the parameters for this bar graph, this trend, the title on the screen for tank number 2, and I can do the same thing with tank number 3. So in each of those 3 screens, really what's happening is it's the same screen, but I'm passing it the parameters specifically for that information that I want to show. So this can be done with a pump faceplate, a motor faceplate, different things that you can imagine there, and that's why it's kind of related, can help you out in water type applications. I'm going to do a quick search here on custom properties. And if I take a look at the custom properties here, custom properties gives you a way that you can do this when you open up a screen. We used to call it screen mnemonics. Now we call it custom properties. And really where it comes into play is on the open screen command, the built-in function. And let me show you this here. Let's scroll down to the open command and maybe a little bit further here. And you can see the open command is a built-in scripting function that opens a screen. Very simply, you can use this to just open up a screen by giving it the name of the screen. For example, open main. That's the very simplest or easiest use of this built-in scripting function. But there are a lot of parameters here, passing it the size and location that you want this screen to appear, whether or not it can be resized. But then these last 2 parameters, these are optional, but they provide a really good, easy-to-use, powerful function called custom properties or mnemonics list. Now, the second to last one here is an optional ID number that you can use to keep track of which screen is open and close them independent from each other if you need to. Let me scroll down and show you some examples in the example section here. So you can use this open command to tell it what screen to open, where to open it, and then pass it parameters as necessary. And you can grow this list of parameters quite long, but if it gets too unruly or you want to manage it a little bit differently, you can actually store all of those parameters in a text file and then just pass it the name of the text file that contains those parameters. So that's how you would use it. Let me go show you a little bit more here in the application. Most people, if they're going to create some navigation, you're going to quite often put a button on the screen, you're going to give it a command animation, and then tell it to open a screen. Well, this is a very simple way to open a screen, but you're not really using scripting here. And this is one of the nice features of InduSoft Web Studio, is you can take advantage of these really nice interfaces, or you can get more powerful and get as complex as you want. So, for example, I could change this instead of being just the open screen command animation. If I wanted to go back to VB script, I could do $, open, and then put my parentheses. And if you notice there, I've got the IntelliSense that shows me the parameters there for that open command. And you can see at the end, the ID and the mnemonics list. So that's essentially how you would use that. Let's get out of, get rid of this here. Let's get out of the PC demo application, and let me open up an application that talks about these custom properties that we did a while back in a webinar, and I'll show you the exact usage of these. So I'm opening this up, and let's run this and show you how this behaves. So let's say that I have 3 different motors, motor A, B, and C, and maybe I've got the ability to turn on and off or stop and start those. For those of you who can't see those, these are changing between green and red as I click on these. I'm going to click on motor A, and you can see here that it's opened up a screen. It's got the label for motor A. I can change the status of that. So this could be a motor faceplate with maybe a motor symbol on it, you know, picture, graphic, your process, your treatment facility, whatever the case may be. But then I can open up motor B, for example, and now I have motor A and motor B open simultaneously. That's where that ID comes into play. So now I can have these open simultaneously and then close them independent of each other. And similar idea, I can have PID faceplates and arrays, and there's lots of really good information up on the website. I have a link later on, but I'm going to show you this. This is a custom properties webinar that we did, and the application that I just showed is available to be downloaded, so you can tear into that and use that however you'd like to in your own project. So that's some good information that we already have up on the website. Now, how can you get to these webinars? There's several different ways. You can go to support, video library, webinars, and you can see all the different categories that we have here. And again, there's well over 130 of these. We're probably up to 140 of these now. So lots of good topics covering just about everything that you can imagine. And again, if you'd like to co-host one with us, let us know. Shoot us an email. We'd love to have you on. Again, just a reminder for this type of webinar, we can't hear you. So if you have any questions or comments, put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel. And either Mark or myself will try to get to them during the presentation or at the end when there's a Q&A section. So I covered a little bit about the symbol library, the symbol of the week, creating your own, some screen parameters. Now let's talk a little bit about driver features that could help you out in a water facility. Let me start a brand new project. I'm just going to overwrite. I already have a project named project. I'm just going to overwrite it. Do you want to continue? Yes. And I'm just going to insert a driver. Now I'm going to choose Modbus TCP. It's pretty common in a lot of different industries, but in water, you might be using drives, you might be using PLCs. So it's pretty common to use Modbus TCP. But what I'm about to show you really is it spans many different drivers. It's not specifically for Modbus TCP. So I apologize, I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing here. So let's go to add remove drivers. I'm going to type in MOT and get me right down to the Modbus TCP. I'm going to insert that into my project. And what I'd like to show you is in this main driver sheet, if you're not familiar with the InduSoft Web Studio drivers, the main driver sheet, basically you can put any address in here and it's going to have a default scan rate of 600 milliseconds, which you can change. But if you really need different than 600 milliseconds, I highly recommend that you insert other what we call standard driver sheets, because then they give you a little bit more flexibility and capabilities to scan and when you're going to read and when you're going to write those. 2 things that I want to cover in drivers before I hand things over to Mark. I highly recommend putting tags in these status fields, at the very least the read status field. And I've done this several different ways, RDST or read status. These are going to be an integer-based tag, so we're going to go ahead and create this, leave this as an integer, display this on your screen or monitor in the background. Most drivers, not all, but most, by default have a 0 in here if you have good communications to the PLC. If this driver sheet has good communications, and it will be non-zero, and it'll be an error code if there is a problem. So what you can do then is you can go into the driver communications manual, and again, I'm just going to go MOTCP here, and open up the PDF manual. Now, most manuals are laid out in the same way, and towards the end, usually the second from the last section, you're going to find troubleshooting. And here you're going to see that error code would be 0 if there's no problems. And again, every driver is a little bit different, so pay attention to the particular driver and the revision that you're using. And you can scroll down and see all the different error codes, and it gives you some great information if there's a problem. in there. So, for example, if you disconnect the cable from Modbus TCP, you're going to get an error code 16. Tells you that you can't connect, and it's going to give you some ideas on how to help you try to troubleshoot this and figure that out. So there's one thing that I highly recommend. Another thing related to this is for read status, it's often really kind of a neat idea to build an array out of this and have index 0 as the main driver sheet. And as you add standard driver sheets, you could have index 1, index 2, index 3, and that helps keep your statuses a little bit easier to manage as you go on. Another thing that I want to mention is let's add a tag here. Let's say level, and maybe that would be a real type tag. And then I'm going to tie this to an address in the PLC. Maybe this is a floating point address. Maybe this is just a holding register here. I'm going to put this just to temporarily put it to a holding register. Now the key is this station field. Most people I see hard code the station field something like this: 192.168.1. We'll do 123. For Modbus TCP, you need a port number and a PLC ID, and so that might be the format of your IP address or your station field. Not a lot of people realize this, but this can actually be a string type tag you can put in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my keyboard and I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to do Control X, and instead of putting a hard-coded PLC address in here, I'm going to put in a string tag. We'll say PLC 1 and close curly bracket. Now those are curly brackets. They are not parentheses. They're curly brackets, and that denotes that I'm using a tag here. So when I click off of that field, it says, hey, do you want to create a tag? And the big point is this has to be a string because we're going to put not only numbers in there, but the decimal points between the octets and the colon between the node number, port number. So we're going to make that a string. Now, where does this come in handy? This comes in handy if you have many PLCs, multiple PLCs spanning multiple driver worksheets. To give you an example, I worked on a project last year that they had about 13 different PLCs and over 7,000 addresses. And during the course of developing the project, they changed the PLC IP addresses twice. So rather than having to go through 7,000 different tags, we just did this in one place. And where did we do this? We did this in the startup script. We just set up at the top here. We said, okay, since this is PLC1 is an InduSoft tag. When you use that in a VB script, you have to precede it with a $sign. And I'm just going to type in PLC and notice that it has that IntelliSense, and it's already starting to form that tag for me. And then I can say equal, and then remember you have to put double quotes around it because you're referring this to as a string. And then I'm going to paste that cut that I did earlier, wrap that with my double quotes. So now if I had 13 different PLCs, I could do that all here in this one location as opposed to the maybe 7,000 different addresses that I had in my driver sheets. So it made it a nice, clear, convenient, easy mechanism to do this, and you wouldn't put the curly brackets in there. So just to make sure everybody understands this, this is $sign PLC1 equals, and then in quotes, the formatted IP address that would be matching the particular driver that you would need. So with that, I'm going to go back into the driver manual here, or actually the PowerPoint. Let's go into here and bring up some additional resources. So I talked about the symbol of the week. I brought that up. Here is a link to that. Again, this webinar is going to be posted, and the slides will be posted up on the website in just a couple of days. So feel free to take a look at that. Sample applications. I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but we actually have a lot of really good sample applications for different industries, different features within the product, whether it be alarming, trending, recipes, reports, lots of different applications. So real good to look through those and help you understand how things are going. If you have a particular sample application that you'd like to see, let us know. Maybe we can put something together for you. Maybe you already have something and can put it up there. Here's the link for that custom properties webinar that I showed earlier. Let's see if I can get this to come up. See if it opens up my correct browser here and comes up and show this. So here we've got, yeah, there's the custom properties. So again, that's going to be in the recording and then in the slide deck that we post. And down here at the bottom is download the application from the webinar that we did a while back, but I referenced here in this webinar. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mark. Hopefully I taught you something today. And so let's unmute Mark. Mark, are you there, sir?
Good day, folks. My name is Mark Morrisich. I'm Managing Director of CMW Automation. And we are based in Port Elizabeth, or what is currently known as Nelson Mandela Bay in South Africa. And we are servicing local as well as national and international industries. We established in 1997 in Port Elizabeth with the view of extending the expertise gained further afield to such industries and automotive and tire manufacturers in our local area. We are a fully fledged Schneider Electric Alliance partner and have also been distributing and integrating InduSoft in South Africa for approximately the last 13 years. We're going to just run through the project that we kind of completed late last year. It's based in a small little town in the Northern Cape in the Karoo region, which is a very arid kind of region, semi-desert. It originally was a locomotive complex where during the diesel era of the railways in South Africa, where they changed from diesel to electric and electric to diesel, depending on which kind of tracks they were running in. But subsequent to basically the failure of our railway network in South Africa, this little town of Noport has basically become kind of just a ghost town with approximately 8,000 people living off state grants and things like that there. It was 1992, they established a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center in the town of Noport. And yes, we don't have any rivers or dams in the near vicinity, so the only thing is groundwater or what we call borehole water. So this project is basic, or this project was and currently is still based on 12 boreholes, 2 pump stations, various reservoirs, all interlinked via a fiber optic network to central control room where the SCADA and database servers are located. The original work consisted of a standby generator which powers one of the main pump stations which pumps to the main reservoir, fiber optic communication network, SCADA system, field instrumentation, and a couple of other bits and pieces on mechanical and civil side. The project originally did not start with the Schneider Electric PLC, and currently is now a Schneider Electric M340 PLC with Schneider Electric Advantis I/O on Ethernet, and the communication protocol is Modbus TCP. We have approximately 500 real I/O points apart from set points, etc., for the whole kind of project. The project started off with a bang, and before we could start commissioning, we found that people started stealing cables and fiber optic cables as well as electrical cables, causing havoc on the project. The project was delayed due to the fact that the main civil contractor had to then go and encase all the cables in concrete over a distance of approximately 25 kilometers for the fiber optic network. I'm going to just show you, just give you a brief overview of the SCADA system that is running, indicating the various locations of the various boreholes, pump stations, reservoirs, chlorination. Currently, we're only chlorinating the water. Later on in the year, we are hoping to install complete online water analysis and some additional chemical dosing to the water. If we just have a look at each one of these entities, if the operator selected, for argument's sake, this borehole, it would pop up a screen indicating the status of that physical borehole, indicating set points, the running conditions, the borehole levels, sea level, the borehole above sea level, the flows, the pressures, as well as trending. All of this is based on one screen. The 12 boreholes are one screen, and we used one massive big symbol to actually populate the actual screen itself. Going back to the bulk water supply, the whole system runs on a pumping schedule, and the operator can change under password protection the actual scheduling of when the actual boreholes must run. Now, if you just note here, there are some little circles drawn around the actual tick mark over here. This is just to indicate that when we started the project, after analysis of what the boreholes were capable of producing, these were default kind of values that were set by the consulting engineers to say, well, if we pump for so long, it will take so long for the borehole to recover, and then we needed to restart. The little orange flashing indicator shows the current hour that we're running in. In South Africa, we're just a little bit past 11 p.m. in the evening, getting towards midnight, and the operator then is capable of actually selecting that the automatic scheduling is enabled or disabled, and if he changes some of the parameters, you'll be notified that he's going to either exceed the actual pumping capabilities of the specific borehole. We also just have a look at the various alarms. We look at communication status between the main station and all the different outstations, being the actual boreholes. We also implemented this what we call an alarm filter, which is a little built-in function within InduSoft, where we can actually go and filter things. Just say, I just want to have a look at the comms issues and on all the physical stations, and it will just go and physically just show us the communication status of all the different boreholes. The same thing actually applies for the historic alarms, where one can go and actually also select, apart from the time and date stamps, or the time and date, we can actually just go and have a look again at the comms. One thing that we implemented was the actual events list, where we record changes in set points, as well as when the operators manually select various or automatically change certain parameters within the system. In the event that somebody changes the set point, which shouldn't have been changed at a certain time, we know where it was before, and we actually made the change. We also just show the chlorination room, just very simplistically. All the graphics are if there's an error or anything, as you note, we change colors, flashing, to try and attract the operator's attention to the situations. I'm just going to go into the actual development of the application. What we did decide to do right in the beginning of the project was to use one of the great things in InduSoft called a class tag. We created a class tag for the various entities, being the pump station, the boreholes, the pump stations, etc. Then what we did is we created, when we created the tags in InduSoft, we actually we created arrays. So over here you can see we created an array of 11 boreholes, which is from 0 to 11, gave us the 12 boreholes. Then what we did is we actually have an integer, which we call the pump number. And when we load the screens, all we do is we pass the new number, or we pass a number to the integer, which then will go and populate the screen with the required information from the borehole that was selected. This is the borehole symbol that we created. It is quite large. We've actually used a lot of the symbols from within InduSoft standard library, such as the push button, these little entities on the bar graphs, the bar graph itself. We just broke them up and re-edited them and put them into our own symbol. We went this route because the consulting engineer as well as the client did not really know what they wanted to display, and we went and developed screens after screen after screen until we got to the finality or the final screen, which we see here today in the whole project. So when the project is running, once again, if we have a look at in the main screen, when the operator selects a specific screen, in this case here, it might have just been this specific pump. We just pass various parameters. Sorry, it just popped up on the wrong side of the screen here. We just populate. We just say the pump number is number 4, the station number is whatever the case might be, and we just label the top banner with whatever it might be, and the reservoir name that the station is actually pumping to is to the main reservoir, and the reservoir number is number 2. One very great thing about InduSoft is that we can actually dock this window, and that when we select any one of the other entities, we don't have to double-click like many other SCADA applications on the market today. I call it arthritis clicking, that by the end of the project you have to go and visit the doctor because of all the clicks that you have to do. Getting back to the project, in real time, we are currently busy with some reporting. It's not completed at this point in time because nobody can tell us what they want. We also just created some very simple menu screens just to say shut down the SCADA, restart the workstation, shut down the workstation, or whatever. The data is currently logged to a SQL database on site, and later on we will move the data to an off-site server for the client to do whatever they want to do with the SQL data in the database. Why did we choose to use InduSoft? Well, capable of running multi-platforms. Originally, our first project was based on multiple Windows CE platforms running one server. We can also have multiple versions of InduSoft installed on the same machine. This is something that many other vendors are actually not capable of doing. The ease of use, class tags, link symbols, InduSoft is very cost effective, great collection of communication drivers, and we are also able to create our own drivers as we are currently busy with at the moment for the analytical online analytics for the water treatment or the water analysis. We've always had great support from InduSoft, and we've done quite a couple of projects where we've used multi-monitors on the projects, indicating the plant overview, alarms, trending, etc., and obviously the dockable object properties of the screen. That's about my input at this point in time. Are there any questions?
So we're going to open it up to questions. If you have any questions, first of all, Mark, thank you very much for doing this and staying up so late. We appreciate this. Hopefully everybody else does. If you have any questions, put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel, and please, send us some questions. Mark, I'm gonna ask you kind of the same question or talk about what we did in this morning's session. If I could have you go back to your project, go back to your screen there. Maybe one of the, so one of the common things that we're seeing a lot now is the use of not a lot of color and animation to be able to easily discern where the problem is. In fact, Waterware or Inventus is actually calling this by a term they're calling situational awareness. So everything is kind of gray and subdued until there's a problem. Do you have any comments on that?
I do. Originally when we started this project, the consulting engineers that we were dealing with, they all into this 3D kind of, this fancy shading and all the bits and pieces that went with it. We started doing some graphics with it, and we found we came unstuck eventually because we couldn't actually either create all the entities in this kind of 3D thing. And then what we did is we actually went to site, to the operators and the supervisor, and we said, okay, here is the 3D or the shaded kind of entity, and this is, and what you see here now, what do you see and what do you prefer? And because we're dealing with some people that are possibly not very literate, and the population possibly that they don't really understand the 3D kind of effect, they actually chose to go this way themselves. And I agree with it because it's less of an issue for us to create this kind of thing. It sometimes does look a little bit bland, but I mean, just looking at this overall screen here, I know exactly what is happening. There's a pump running over here. I can find my mouse. There's a pump running over here. This pump is basically currently on standby, but there's possibly a communication error or whatever it is with these specific stations. And that is basically what the client and the user actually wants to see. Doing the 3D stuff, I don't know. It doesn't work for me always. In all the years that I've been doing SCADA, I've always tried to stay a little bit shy from it because it is difficult to do.
Yeah, I don't know where I learned this, but as I teach different training classes, I found out that about 10% of men are colorblind, a little bit less than women, about 0.1 or 0.01% of women are colorblind. So there's a chance that 10% of your operators can't even see the status changes on the screen. So it's highly recommended to not only make changes with the color, but maybe words and maybe even symbols to go from a circle to a triangle or to a square, denoting when you have changes there. So that's good. I'm glad you guys found this out and figured this out on your own. Something else that I'd like to point out, and again, we have it open up to questions. We've got a question in the queue here, but I'll get to that in a second. I don't know if you did this intentionally, and I couldn't tell what screen you had open, but there's a feature in InduSoft Web Studio called No Drag or Disabled Drag.
Yes.
Did you use that on purpose?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Disabled drag.
Yeah, so what I'd just like to highlight this feature to those of the attendees that are not familiar with it. If there's a couple of different ways to turn it on. You can right-click on the background of the screen, or you can go up to the Graphics tab under Disabled Drag. And what I found is that as I create screens, I often will create my screens cosmetically and get them lined up and everything where I want them. And it's very detailed where you have the maps here. And then what you can do is disable this drag. And then, Mark, if I could have you point down in the very right-hand corner, very bottom right-hand corner of the status bar, it says no drag down there. And what that does is allows you to still click on objects and configure them, get the properties open, but it prevents the objects from being moved on the screen, so you don't actually accidentally nudge them out of the way once you have everything lined up and positioned where you want it. Mark, for the question that we have in the queue, I'm going to actually take presentation status back from you. So let me do that here. Because the question that we have in the queue is what is meant by running multiple versions of InduSoft on the same machine? And I actually have a way that I can show that. So what that means is as you've deployed, so before I get onto that, I just wanted to show one of the symbols that we have in the symbol of the week that would highlight maybe not using a whole lot of colors and using symbols to announce problems. Let me get that out of the way here. But what I wanted to point out is, for example, in this case, I have InduSoft version 8 on my machine, and I also have InduSoft version 7.1 on the same PC, and I can go back to version 6.1 if I wanted to, and have all of those installed so that you could maintain customer applications that were at different versions. Now, you can't run projects that are different versions simultaneously on the same computer, but you can at least have the development environments installed simultaneously. So that's the answer to that. Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that is one of the great things, because we have customers that go back from, I think, 6.5, 7.1, and 8.0 currently. And I mean, I can tell you now that we've been down this road many times before with some other products on the market, and it's really a pain. It is really a big pain to either the customer, you have to try and develop at the customer, or he doesn't have development and you need to do it maybe off-site. And no, this is just a great thing for me, really.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to add, kind of similar, and I apologize, I seem to be talking over you. I think there's a few second delay in the audio here. But in addition to having multiple versions installed, one of the really nice features of InduSoft Web Studio is also the ability to what we call investment protection. And I'll tell you what, you've been using InduSoft a long time, but I've been using it just a little bit longer than you have. I go back to the 90s, so somewhere around 18 years or so, a little bit more than that. And I can tell you that a project that I developed in the 90s, we recently had that customer come back to us and wanted to use some of the features in 8.0, and they didn't have to do anything at all to bring it into InduSoft Web Studio. They just opened up the project. It came into the latest version. They took advantage of the new features, and they were able to deploy that without hardly any, with no problems whatsoever. Mark, I don't know if I took that presentation status from you a little bit too early. Let me hand it back to you here because I want to make sure that you get your contact information up there. So I'm giving you presentation status. Go ahead and share your screen again. Get that information up there. Yeah.
So once again, with InduSoft, we've been many kind of vendors for a couple of products, and I'm a born InduSoft user. So anyway, this is our contact detail. We do offer a very special thing today. You're more than welcome to come visit us in South Africa. We'll take you to the Addo Elephant Park or whatever it is. But this is our contact information. Our website is a little bit currently outdated. We're changing to a new company that is going to host and develop our website. But otherwise, if you visit us on Facebook, it is pretty much up to date with a couple of other InduSoft projects that you can have a look at over there. Great stuff. I want to thank everybody for your time spent, and nearly midnight here, nearly my bedtime. So Scott and everybody else, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. We'll still keep it open for questions for just a minute or two. I'm going to take back presentation status. So you're in the southern hemisphere. What's the temperature there now?
Currently, let me just have a look here. We are now is 11:52 and we're still sitting at 21 degrees Celsius. So,
how much was it?
Went up to, we're sitting at 21 degrees Celsius currently.
Okay, so that's still about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think you told me earlier that you were at 40 something?
42, 42 degrees yesterday. Yeah, we melted.
Which is about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm I'm in the northern part of the United States, and today it was 0 degrees C, or exactly freezing where I'm at.
No, I'll stay where I am. Thank you very much.
So again, we have it open up for Q&A. If there's any other questions, put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel. And otherwise, I'm going to leave it on this thank you slide. Yeah, somebody was saying, oh, it's 90 degrees where they're at. Yeah, I often look forward to going to our Austin facility when it's winter up here where I'm at. Okay, so I don't see any other questions come in, so we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us for this webinar and others. And again, we record this. We'll have it up on the website soon. Don't forget to fill out that survey. Let us know how Mark and I did today, how InduSoft is doing in general. And if you'd like to co-host a webinar, let us know that too. Mark, very, very, very much thank you for staying up so late and showing us your application. Really neat. I really like some of the things that you've done. And let's make sure that we stay in touch after this. And Mark, any other final comments?
No, just once again, thanks to everybody. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your assistance in trying to get this thing off the ground for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to end the webinar. And everybody else, have a great day. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next time.